This video was sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can pre-order all the cards in this video by using the link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nita Hone, and today is Friday, and that means it's time for another MTG Top 10. Over the last week, I've been doing my limited set review for Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth, and as usual during set review season, I do an MTG Top 10 about that new limited format too. In this video, I'll be giving you my picks for the 10 biggest bombs in the format. In Magic, a bomb is a good thing. It refers to a card that is so good that it drastically alters the game in your favor. In other words, these are the most powerful cards in the set, and you most want to see them in your Pack 1 Pick 1 or in your sealed pool. Almost all limited bombs are rares or mythic rares, as it would be a big problem if they showed up at lower rarities too. If you're interested in my thoughts on more than just these 10 most powerful cards in the set, check out my set review where I have discussed every single card, including the commons and uncommons. Alright, here are my picks for the 10 biggest bombs in Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth. At number 10, I have Aragorn the Unifier. Aragorn's biggest problem is just that he's kind of hard to cast since he costs 4 different colors of mana, but he's well worth the effort because every time you cast a spell, something happens. Some of the effects are more powerful than others, but he gets especially silly if you cast multicolored spells after you play him, and this format does have enough multicolored spells for you to do that reasonably consistently. There's also enough fixing in the format that casting Aragorn certainly isn't out of the question, especially if you're in a base green deck. So even though he's hard to cast, I think you do end up playing him every time you get him in your sealed pool, provided you have at least a little bit of fixing, and I think you end up taking him with a first pick most of the time too. He's just not going to be as hard to cast as it looks, and the effects that he gives you are incredibly powerful. At number 9, I have Horn of Gondor. This one might take a little while to completely take over the game, because at first, you basically get a 3-mana 1/1 token. However, things quickly become a problem for your opponent because you can just keep using that ability every turn and doubling the number of 1/1 tokens you have. And sometimes it'll be even more than that because it counts all of your humans. Humans are a big theme in the set, especially in the red-white deck, but this will work well in any deck. It's going to feel a lot like Pack Rat. As I said in the set review, Pack Rat was one of the biggest limited bombs of all time, so that's good company to keep. They're similar in that once you get this in play, you don't really need to worry about ever casting spells again, because just using this ability over and over again is going to win you the game within a few turns. It's also great that it's colorless, so you know every time you first pick this, you're going to be playing it in your deck, and it's probably going to be the best card in your deck. At number 8, I have Shelob, Child of Ungoliant. First of all, this is just a massive spider as a 6-mana 8/8, but then it has a whole lot of other stuff going on. Having Death Touch on your 8/8 isn't the most exciting thing in the world, but it does have Ward 2, making it very hard to kill. It also gives bonuses to your other spiders, and while there aren't a ton of them in the format, there are a few of them, but what really makes Shelob into a bomb is its last ability, which makes it so that any time a creature that was dealt damage by one of your spiders dies, you create a token copy of that creature. Except it's a food, so it's a little bit weird maybe. But you end up getting food with big upside, and food has a lot of things you can do with it in the format. And, you know, if this food has static abilities or activated abilities or anything else, you can end up reaping the benefits of those. And if it doesn't, well, you can still sacrifice it to various other effects, and you can use it to gain life. And yeah, while Ward 2 isn't quite hexproof, when the creature is this big, there aren't really that many removal spells that your opponent can use to efficiently deal with Shelob. So adding 2 mana on top of whatever it is they have to play means it's going to be very hard for them to break even against Shelob, and that's a problem, because if they don't kill Shelob, they're probably going to lose. At number 7, I have There and Back Again. This saga gives you a ton of value, and then eventually gives you a really powerful creature. The first chapter makes it so one creature can't block for the entire time There and Back Again is in play, and the ring tempts you, so you get some serious value up front. You're not always going to be able to take advantage of Chapter 1, maybe you do sort of need to be the beatdown to take advantage, but the fact that you also get the ring tempts you usually means you'll be able to set up a pretty good attack right away with Chapter 1, because you'll be augmenting your creature with the ring and taking away the ability of their creature to block. Chapter 2 fetches you a mountain and puts it into play tapped, so it ramps your mana a little bit. But Chapter 3 is what really makes this a bomb because it gives you a 6/6 flying haste dragon that gives you 14 treasure when it dies. This is going to feel like a lot of the more powerful Kamigawa Neon Dynasty sagas did, because it comes into play, does some stuff for you, and then in the end you end up getting a very real creature out of it. One that can quickly end the game in the sky. At number 6, I have Radagast the Brown. Most of the time when you play Radagast, you're going to start out with a 2-for-1 because you'll play him, and you'll look at the top 4 cards of your library, and you'll get to grab a creature, provided it doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control, and put it into your hand. So that's sort of the floor here. I mean, I guess the floor is that you completely whiff and you have a 4-mana 2/5. That's not the worst floor. But like 80% of the time, you're going to draw off of Radagast the Brown's Enter the Battlefield ability, and it doesn't end there, because every time you play a creature going forward, you get this trigger again. And because Radagast helps you find creatures with the ability, there's a pretty good shot that you'll just keep chaining extra draws together, and every creature you play is going to be a 2-for-1. Obviously, if you're playing 1 or 2 mana cards, it's going to be a little harder to make it happen, but you still get a shot at grabbing something, even when you cast something that costs very little mana. If you're casting things that cost 4 or 5 over and over again, that's where it's going to be pretty hard for you to whiff. I guess in an ideal world, you do have kind of a nice mix of creature types, because that way you're more likely to be able to draw the creatures you find, but your typical limited deck usually has a good enough mix of creature types that you'll be able to make this work most of the time, and the value he will give you insurmountable card advantage. So he may not have an impressive body or kill your opponent quickly like some of the other cards on this list, but he does draw you a bunch of cards, and again has a floor where he's usually going to be a 2-for-1. At number 5, I have Saruman of Many Colors. First of all, he has a ward that is pretty difficult for your opponent to ever feel good about. They may not even have an enchantment, instant, or sorcery card available to discard so that they can actually target Saruman. But even if they do, that means they're 2-for-1ing themselves. So this is another case where the fail case is kind of a 2-for-1, but where he gets really absurd is when you cast a second spell in a turn, at which point each opponent mills 2 cards. Then, based on the mana value of the things you mill, you get a shot to cast an enchantment, instant, or sorcery card from your opponent's graveyard for free. You don't have to pay any mana for it. So it takes a little bit of setup, but the fact that Saruman has this ward effect usually means you're going to have enough time to find a way to double spell and then manage to cast something for free that your opponent has in their graveyard. If you just do that once, it's going to be absurd, and you'll usually be able to do it a couple of times. At number 4, I have Fall of Gil-galad. There are not a lot of 2-mana bombs. You know, we see them every few formats or so, and I definitely think this is one of them. It delivers absolutely insane value for how much mana you spend. You get to scry 2 right away. Next turn, you put 2 counters on something. And then on turn 3, you make it so when one of your creatures dies, you get to draw 2 cards. And then you have that creature fight. And all of this synergizes well together. Chapter 2 buffs something so that it'll be able to fight better. And then Chapter 3's effect, where you can choose to have the creature fight after you give it this ability, means there's almost always going to be a fight that's worth having, even if your opponent killed the thing you put counters on or whatever, because at worst you're sort of sacrificing a creature to draw 2 cards. The times where you just kill your opponent's thing are going to be nice. Killing your opponent's thing and also losing your creature and drawing 2 cards is pretty nice too. This just does a ton. You know, one thing about it is you don't really end up playing it on turn 2 most of the time. I guess maybe if you played a 1-drop you do. Most of the time you're going to want to wait to play it until you have a creature in play so that Chapter 2 and 3 can do their thing, but it's still so cheap and so powerful that it's definitely one of the biggest bombs in the set. At number 3, I have Andúril, Flame of the West. This is an incredibly powerful piece of equipment. It offers +3/+1, which is already a pretty good boost for 3 to cast and 2 to equip. That makes almost any creature into a threat in Limited. But what really makes it a bomb is the fact that whenever that equipped creature attacks, you get 2 1/1 White Spirit creature tokens with flying. So you add to your board while attacking your opponent, and not only that, the tokens that you make are a great place for you to just keep equipping this, assuming your attacking creature died, and that's what really makes this a big problem for your opponent. It's an incredibly powerful card. It's also colorless, like Horn of Gondor, so every time you see this card, it's going to be great because you're like, hey, no matter what my deck is, I'm going to be able to play this, and that's awesome. At number 2, it is Sauron the Dark Lord. He's similar to Saruman in that he has a ward that is far from guaranteed that your opponent will be able to pay it. They have to sacrifice a legendary artifact or a creature, or they just can't target Sauron. But again, like with Saruman, even if they can pay this cost, chances are pretty good that the best they're going to get is a 2-for-1. And it gets even worse than that, because when your opponent casts a spell, you also get to amass Orcs 1. So you're still going to have a 1/1 left behind, and they 2-for-1 themselves. And that's if they can even deal with Sauron. If they can't, we're talking about a huge creature that can hit for 7 at a time, that has the ring tempt you every single time an army hits your opponent, and he makes armies. And anytime the ring tempts you, which your armies can help you do, you can discard your hand and draw 4 cards. So he's a card advantage engine. He's going to spit out 1/1s or, buff your army anytime your opponent does something. He's hard to kill, and he gives you extra ring tempts you value. Overall, that makes him an incredibly good bomb, though I do think only the second best one in the set, obviously enough. Before we get to that number 1 card, I do want to show you the honorable mentions. These are the cards that got bomb grades in the set review, but didn't quite make the list. And at number 1, I have Witch King of Angmar. So this is a huge flyer, 5 mana, 5/3. That can end the game in a hurry. Usually by the time you play it, it can do it in 2 or 3 swings. At worst, can usually do it in 4 swings. On top of that, it can become indestructible for no mana. You do have to discard a card, so make sure you have a card in your hand. But provided you do, Witch King of Angmar is almost entirely untouchable. It also means he can attack into anything, and you can be happy to give him indestructible and kill whatever flying blocker there is. So if we ended things there, Witch King of Angmar would probably be like number 10 on this list. Like, it would already be on the list. But then it has one more effect that's very powerful, and that is that anytime one or more creatures does combat damage to you, your opponent has to sacrifice a creature that dealt combat damage to you, and the ring tempts you. So you get both of those effects. That is huge pain for your opponent. Anytime you have Witch King of Angmar in play and your opponent attacks you, I would advise thinking a little more than you usually would about how you're going to block, because what this means is if only one of your opponent's creatures gets through to hit you, they're going to have to sacrifice it. So sometimes it might even be worth chump blocking and things like that just to set it up so you kill whatever creature you want to. Even if you don't have the luxury of setting that sort of thing up, it's still a very powerful ability. The ring tempts you is going to be a nice effect to have, and obviously subtracting from your opponent's board and punishing them just for attacking you, while you can continue to attack them in the air without fear of basically anything, is what makes Witch King of Angmar the biggest bomb in the format. So those are my picks for the 10 biggest bombs in Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth. If you want to own any of these incredibly powerful cards, check out the description, where you can find a direct Card Kingdom link for each card that appeared in the video. If you want to make sure you catch future videos, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to watch my set review, you should see the playlist on your screen shortly. And if you want to go the extra mile in supporting me and the channel, you can do that by becoming a channel member or a patron. You can find ways to do those things in the description. Thanks for watching.